Welcome back to Everything But the Lesson Plan, the podcast that explores the challenges and triumphs of educators inside and outside of the classroom. I am Franchesca Thompson, and today we're diving into a deeply personal and profound topic: faith in crisis. Right now, we are living in uncertain times. Education budgets are being slashed. The Department of Education is being reduced. People around the country are being laid off, and new political leadership is shifting the landscape of our schools and communities. Many educators, students, and families are struggling with fear, doubt, and a sense of powerlessness. A friend of mine stated that every day she walks into work, it feels like she's walking on eggshells. When everything around us feels uncertain, how do we hold on to our faith? How do we navigate doubt and find stability in times of crisis? To help us unpack this, I am honored to have Dr. Jaye Lynn Peabody Smith with us today. Dr. Smith is a scholar, speaker, and a spiritual mentor with an extensive background and experience in guiding individuals through faith-based challenges. Welcome to the show, Dr. Peabody Smith. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm so glad to be with you.
Yeah, this is definitely a topic that is needed. I've probably talked to maybe three people today, and all of them, it's just this fear, it's this uncertainty, and it's in different things. It's fear they're in school and they're fearful of the things that are happening in school, at work, in their house. And so this is just definitely a topic that is needed. So let's start by defining spiritual distress. What does it look like, and how do we recognize it in ourselves and others?
Well, spiritual distress is kind of this state of discomfort or the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And it happens when our spiritual beliefs um, or our values or even our sense of purpose is challenged. And so it leaves us feeling hopeless, hopeless, empty, confused. Anxiety is very much contagious. And so you've probably heard people say that they walk into the school and they can feel the anxiety that's
Mhm.
right there, right?
Yeah.
Because again, anxiety and emotions are contagious. So everybody is feeling it right now. And
Yeah.
it affects our mental, our physical, our emotional. It affects all of us, all of who we are, and
Mhm.
can really an increase of this can really lead to anxiety, depression, or just a simple not loving life like we used to.
Yeah. And
And so,
that all affects your health.
oh, absolutely. Your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health, and your spiritual health.
Yeah.
And some of the, you said, what might it look like?
Hmm.
Sometimes it looks like very much the same symptoms that you would find with depression,
Hmm.
that hopelessness, despair,
Hmm.
lack of motivation, um, anger or frustration. Behind anger is often fear or some type of disappointment. Um, it looks like wondering if what I'm doing even matters anymore.
Mm, that's a good one.
Yeah, and so life begins to not have that same type of purpose. And then it's a lot of questioning, a lot of that what if. Most of those things we're not going to be able to do anything about.
Yeah.
If we're constantly asking that question, then we have moved from faith into fear.
Hmm. Yeah. And I like that you said that, the questioning. I mean, me and you literally just had a conversation before we started this Zoom where was just kind of in a panic about my state of where I am with my dissertation process, and just that 2 minute conversation just realize, help me like calm down. It's gonna be okay. It is what it is. We can't change it. And so we've got to just continue to move forward with what we have. And so it's sometimes I think that like you said, that fear of the unknown
Hmm.
is just what scares us, you
Yeah.
know?
And that makes sense. I mean, it is okay to fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
That's what it is. We can't control it. It's going to happen. And that's kind of where our faith has to come into play.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many people, so many people turn to faith for strength, but what happens when faith itself is shaken?
Well, the reality is life happens. So
Hmm.
there are going to be times when our faith is shaken. If you're a part of the Christian faith in Luke 22:32, Jesus actually says, I think he's talking to Peter, and he says, I prayed for you that your faith may not fail.
Hmm.
Because the reality is, all of us have those moments where our faith is shaken, if we're honest about it.
Yeah.
The good thing is, we don't have to get stuck there.
Hmm.
Even our spaces where we are in this spiritual distress or our faith is being shaken, that's really a time to be introspective, to see how we can grow, to transform our relationship with our higher being at that time.
Yeah.
Um, you know, faith does include having questions.
Mm. Mm. That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
So it's really just trusting the process and trusting and believing.
hmm And I think it was Max Lakuto, the leadership guru, said
Hmm.
something similar to that. Faith is not belief that God will do what you want, it's the belief that God will do what's right.
That's
So
right.
whatever happens, that God is going to be there and it's going to work out.
Hmm.
And sometimes we're going to have to just go through some things. Um, but there's a blessing on the other side of through. So one of the things I try to remind myself is it's just temporary. It's not always going to feel this way.
Hmm. So when someone finds themselves like in the middle of a faith crisis, and you know how people can get, you got different stages of that. Like
Hmm
some people, it really shakes them. And I mean, they can just completely lose it. Some people in the middle part, and then some people can really recover quickly. But
hmm
what are the steps that they can take to regain stability?
Well, I think the first step is going to be very honest
Hmm.
in how you're feeling. Um, One of the beautiful things about having a relationship with a God or a higher being is that God already knows.
Hmm.
So we don't have to walk around like everything is okay when we don't feel like it is. If you have children and you ask them, how are you feeling? And they're like, fine, but they have an attitude. It's like you already know they're not fine. And
Yeah.
so God and our higher being work the same way. So giving ourselves some grace and some empathy for the spot that we're in right now. And again, that reminder, not always going to be this way. And some of the things that are helpful are, of course, going back to if it's the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, going back and reading it. But sometimes you might want to read other books that speak to whatever situation that you're going to that are faith-based. Journaling. Journaling is not like keeping a diary. It's
Mhm.
more about getting whatever's in your mind out of your mind.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just gotta write down all the things that you're afraid of. Um, for a prayer journal, I will write down what it is that I'm asking God. I will write down a scripture that speaks to it. And then when God answers, I'll put the answer and the date. And
Hmm.
so on those times when I'm feeling like I don't know how this is going to work out, I go back to my journal so I can remember when it did work out.
That
Um,
is great. You know what? I have never thought about that. I, I've just always used my journaling as a way of just saying, this is the problem.
hmm
But I never go back when the problem is solved and say, hey, this is the time that the problem was solved. That's a great piece of advice.
and it just helps to remind you that it's bigger
Yeah.
than, and that it is going to work out in due time. And
Hmm.
sometimes when you think about how much you worried about something in the past, and then it works out, you almost wish you can get that time back. So
Yeah.
sometimes having this journal just reminds you, let's not get stuck here, right?
Right.
Engaging in whatever spiritual practices. Um, and also, it sounds simple, but kind of just go outside.
Mm.
Sometimes connecting with nature helps us to remember that there is something that is way bigger than us,
Yeah.
and that helps us to reconnect spiritually. And then,
Mm.
of course, being with other people. Most of what people are going through right now, there is more than one person going through it, right? There's a community of people going through it. And there's something to just being with other people that gives us hope. And being able to be honest and transparent gives us hope. And so that hope also brings us back to a spiritual place of stability.
Yeah, I like that. And just, just being honest, the journaling, the nature part, because that's one thing I do. I definitely just make sure every day I get outside. Um,
Hmm.
and it really gives me something to journal about because I'm able to just kind of reflect and just look at the beauty of this world, right? And just be appreciative of being in that moment. So, and it
So
takes my mind off of things.
that goes along with self-care in general,
Yeah.
right? We all talk about self-care and the importance of self-care.
Hmm.
Most of us aren't practicing self-care,
That's right.
especially educators,
Yeah.
because you all have so much to do,
Hmm.
right? But self-care doesn't have to be a trip or a vacation. Self-care is just like you said, going outside,
Yeah.
um, doing something physical, taking a 10-minute time out where you just, you know, take a hot shower. Just these small things to kind of
Okay.
remind us, that we matter.
Yeah.
Um, and again, also a part of self-care is just being patient with ourselves and
Hmm.
understanding because we're having this situation, it doesn't mean that we lack faith, right? It just means that we're going through a faith moment.
Yeah. And like you said, that empathy part. So that's really big. Especially right now. We're coming towards the end of the year for most school districts, and it's really good for you to start practicing some of these things that Dr. Peabody is Smith is sharing with us today because it's stressful right now. So
Hmm.
these are good things. So, okay, so as educators, how can we support our colleagues who might be going through their own spiritual crisis? And this is really important because the way someone else, your colleague, might be going through something, it can impact you,
Hmm.
especially if it's someone who is really down. I've been in spaces and places where someone is just complaining literally every day about a thing. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh my God, I don't want to hear it again. But you want to help, but you don't know how to. So how can we support someone else?
Well, the first thing, of course, is giving that person that grace
Yeah,
and empathy. Um, Even if our situation is not the same, we all know what it's like to be afraid
yeah.
or to feel betrayed. So empathy says we're getting in touch with how they're feeling.
Hmm.
I encourage people to avoid spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is when we throw cliches at everything because it sounds good,
Mm,
like, you know, God's got it, or, you know, those type of things.
yeah.
Not that it's not true, it's just not what someone needs to hear in that moment.
Mm,
Oftentimes, they already know that.
yeah.
Right? That doesn't mean if it doesn't come on your heart to send them a scripture or a word of encouragement, sure, you can do so. But don't just say these cliches and not actually be with the person in that moment.
Mm,
And really, the best way to know how to support your colleague is to say to them, how can I support you?
mm-hmm,
What can I do to support you?
mm-hmm,
Just simply ask. Some will say nothing. I just need to be able to vent. And some may give you some tangible things, but just like we're all going through things different, that support looks different. And instead of trying to guess, just simply ask, how can I support you during this time?
mm-hmm. I like that because a lot of people want to give advice all the time, and sometimes that's just not needed. So, and
Listen,
yes,
I, my best friend and we have this thing. When I call her, she says to me, do you want to vent or do you want advice?
I love it.
90% of the time, I just want to vent.
Yeah.
I just want to get it out. And most of the time, we want to get it out so that someone else can hear us and we know that we're not alone
Mm-hmm.
or that we haven't just, lost our mind, that somebody gets it. And then sometimes I do need advice, but most of us, we already know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when we give advice when it's not warranted, then sometimes that person feels like you don't trust them to make a good decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's really good. So I literally just did that today with one of my colleagues. Issue came up and I just needed to vent and she was able to listen and then I did one I brushed off my shoulder at the end. I said, "Okay, that's gone." And then
Hmm.
we just had a happy conversation after that and that was it.
Yes.
I felt good.
Hmm.
So
And
good
sometimes it's
relief
just
came up.
getting it outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And you just need to hear it or you need to process it. And somebody that is willing to give you that space to do that
Yeah.
without judgment, without advice, that alone is a spiritual place,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
so that kind of connects us back to our spiritual selves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So, we know that social media plays a huge role in shaping our thoughts and emotions, and most people are on social media, some form. So how do you think it influences spiritual distress, and what are some ways to manage its impact?
Well, again, let's go back to this idea that emotions are contagious.
Mm-hmm.
So, even through social media. So, if you're following somebody that is always doom and gloom, is
Mm.
always talking about the negative and the fear mongering, then you're going to pick up on that energy. So, I would say unfollow them.
Mm-hmm.
You could even unfriend people. Most of them won't even know that you've unfriended them,
Yeah.
honestly. Right? But to be careful about who you're following on social media.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't speak life to you, then don't follow. The same thing with notifications. Just, at the last week or so, I've decided to turn off my news notifications.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to know everything that's going on in the world. I check it in the morning and I check it in the evening. But that notification during the day just was doing something to me, emotionally. But I am a big social media person. I
Yeah.
love social media. But you just gotta follow people that are going to pour into you
That's
and that are going to make you feel good. And people that are going through the same thing that you're going through.
Mm-hmm. You're
There's
right.
something about that support. So I'm I had to fast a little bit from social media and I was very disappointed because I feel like oftentimes that's where I do hear from God through somebody's
Mhm.
testimony or their meme. So following, seeing social media, just remembering that it's contagious. And so following those people or whatever it is that's going to speak life into you.
Yeah. And I follow a lot of I'm like you. I love quotes. I'm a quote addict. Okay.
Me
So
too.
I follow those pages that kind of produce those positive quotes almost every hour. So
Hmm.
my page is flooded with that and I get to read those and I so that that makes my day. There's something that I can take from it. I'm like you. I don't follow a lot of news. I absolutely do not watch the news at all. If I do get news, it is through my social media platforms
Hmm.
because I had to turn that off years ago. It was just I used to wake up in the morning, turn on the news, watch it, and then go to work, and I was just so negative. And it was
Mm.
because all of that, what I had just, you know, digested in the morning was just so negative. And so I
Yeah.
knew I had to turn off the news.
Yeah.
So I kind of, if it's something major, I'm sure my husband would let me know. But other
Anyway,
than
somebody's
that,
gonna let you know.
yeah. Other than that, I don't need that in my life.
Right.
So, well, those are all definitely good tips. So, before we go, this has just been great. I'm glad that you were able to join today and give us just a little bit of advice, especially with where we are now in today's time. So, is there any other thing that you would like to share, just some words of encouragement for those who are experiencing challenging times?
Well, I think back to a woman named Corey Boom, and she was somebody that during the Holocaust would hide Jews in her home to
Mm-hmm.
keep them safe. Um, it's interesting because sometimes even today we're having to hide people or help keep people safe.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, But she said to never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God.
Mm. Wow.
Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God.
Wow.
There's a lot to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of it is unknown. But the reality is, while God is with us right now, God is also ahead of us already working it out. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of where that quote is kind of where my encouragement lies.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate you having me on. Educators have a special place in my
Yeah.
heart because I know how hard you all work. I have a son on the spectrum who is in college now, but it's only
Oh,
because of the educators and the people around him. And so it saddens me that you all have to have this anxiety,
yeah.
heightened anxiety right now, because y'all are like superheroes. But
Mm-hmm.
again, just going back to Ms. Boone's quote, never be afraid to trust the unknown future to a known God.
Yeah, that's how we gonna end it. That is perfect for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Peabody Smith.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you've enjoyed the episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Until next time, I need you guys to take care of yourself and I need you to keep on thriving.